So I talked about in my previous video how one of my most sought after elements was the film emulation look. And one of the things that I didn't mention in a lot of my previous videos is, I talk about these camera bodies a lot, but one of the things that's more important than the camera body itself is the lenses. Now, if you're watching this video and you're anything like me, finding lenses that give you that cinematic look on a budget is very, very hard to find. They're usually with its drawbacks. But today I'm going to talk about a lens that was made in the 60s that, some of the drawbacks actually make it perfect for narrative filmmakers and someone looking to make short films or feature films or just overall cinematic content that tells a story. But before we get into that, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, my name is Da Vinci HD, where I talk about gear, filmmaking, and everything else that comes with cinema. And if you like this video and want to see more content from me, hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me put out more content like this for you guys. So the lens that I'm going to be talking about today is the Helios 44-2 58mm f2. This is a lens that's had a cult following for a very long time. So there's multiple variations of this lens, and the history of the lens itself dates back multiple decades as well. So they were originally produced in the USSR back in the early 50s and were designed for Zenit cameras. And they were also compatible with M42 mount cameras. And the lens that you're seeing me on right now has that M42 screw mount as well. Now, I won't get into the deep history and the multiple variations of this lens. There's some like the 44 M4, M6. The one that I'm going to be focusing on is the 44-2. Now, as stated before, this is a 58mm lens. It has an aperture of f2, and it does require mount adapters to convert it to whatever camera you're using it on. Currently, I'm using it on my Sony a7 III, but I do plan on using it on my GH5 as well to do a comparison to see how the differences look between both cameras with this lens. However, it is important to note that if you're not using a full frame camera, you do need to account for the times crop that your sensor puts out from your camera. So with that being said, I'm going to get into some of my use cases with this lens. I'm going to get into the reason why I bought this lens. And later on in the video, if you stick around, I'm going to show you how this lens paired with a particular plugin that I talked about in a previous video is probably one of the most cinematic combos that you can use to get a film look. And it's also probably, in my opinion, probably cheating in 2024 to probably get that look to make yourself stand out. So to talk about the specific reason why I bought this lens, something that I haven't gone into great detail about this channel yet, but will be coming soon, is the feature film that I plan on shooting in the summertime. And knowing that this was my first feature film, that it was going to be on a pretty much micro to basically no budget at all, I wanted to try to find gear that was going to have a bang for a buck workflow when it comes to really putting together the story that I want to put together for you guys. Now, I had seen this lens on YouTube for a long time by various other creators, but what really prompted me to lean into more research on this lens was the fact that I had seen that a particular movie had shot certain scenes with this lens. I'm not particularly certain that they shot the entire movie with this lens, but once I figured out that someone took this lens and rehoused it to be able to shoot narrative content with it, I wanted to lean forward and see what kind of images I could really get out of this lens. And it really offers something that I value in any lens that I look at, and that's lens character. See, let's not get it misconstrued. This is a very, very old lens. It's a vintage lens. So there are a lot of imperfections about this lens that for professional shooters would not necessarily make this their first choice to take out when they go on a shoot. It's very much a stylistic choice when you choose to put this lens on your camera. However, for narrative filmmakers and someone who's trying to tell a story with their content, the imperfections in this lens might actually make it perfect for someone who's trying to convey certain emotions, especially if you're able to color the footage from this lens correctly. So one of the pros with this lens is something that a lot of YouTubers talk about when they get their hands on this lens, and that's the swirly bokeh that you get wide open at f2. Which also brings me into another pro about this lens, is being at f2, you're able to get a lot of low light capability when you pair this lens with a full frame camera, or even some APS-C cameras that have great low light capability. So something that could be a pro or a con when it comes to this lens, depending on what stylistic choice you're looking to make when you're on set. The flares from this lens are very much in your face. You know, even at nighttime, I shot a music video with this lens. Now, like I said, if you like those flares and that's a stylistic choice that you're going for, then this is perfect for you. But for someone who's looking to do a lot more professional shoots, you may want to think about it before you pick this lens up. Now, if you're someone who doesn't like all that bokeh and flaring, you can kind of dial back some of that if you take your aperture to about a f4. But it's very much still in your face, and there's not much dialing back you're going to be able to do in post to kind of get rid of that. So I want to talk about the price of this lens. Now, that's a whole different discussion, right? So if you were to look on eBay and pick this lens up originally the way it was made, you could probably find this lens for as cheap as $60, right? But I'm going to tell you why for filmmakers I would not recommend that. So if you pick the lens up for its cheapest price, more than likely there's not going to be some of the features that you need for filmmakers when it comes to going on set and filming a narrative content. So that comes with, you know, having follow focus and things of that nature, the aperture being declicked, filters on that lens that would be able to fit your matte box and stuff like that. So something I recommend when it comes to searching for this lens online is to search for Sony modded versions of this lens. And the reason why I say that is because you have a team of people at certain companies that make it their job and their passion to take this lens and fully mod it for filmmakers like us looking to tell a story and really invoke emotion. So they take this lens, they declick the aperture completely. They also put follow focus gears and aperture gears on the lens, and they also put front filters and adapters on the lens to be able to fit regular matte boxes on this lens. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you can take lens adapters and mount this lens to pretty much any camera that you want. So then at that point, it just becomes a stylistic choice as far as the lens and camera combination that you want to use when it comes to your film set. However, if I had to make any recommendation, the two cameras I would pair this lens with is probably any Sony camera in 2024 and probably the GH5 and GH6. Those are the two best cameras I would probably pair this with. I know these are two cameras that I talk about a lot, but the GH5 would offer you good stabilization, and then you're able to put a Metabone speed booster and take away some of the 2x crop, and even more if you're willing to put a ×0.43 adapter, front angle adapter on this lens to really take the focal length back down a little bit and give yourself a wide field of view. But for full frame cameras, this lens is pretty much golden, and even APS-C cameras, because most narrative content and feature films are filmed on Super 35 sensors anyway. But the Sony modded versions of this lens are going to cost you about $200 for them to actually do, and it does take a while for that lens to get shipped to you because more than likely the lens is going to be coming from over in Ukraine and it's going to have to pass customs and stuff like that. So I would have to say, just overall, if you're someone who's looking for a very much cinematic film look from a lens on a budget, this is a lens that I would definitely look at in 2024 to pair with pretty much any camera that you use. But if you made it this far in the video, I want to talk about when you pair footage from this lens with a particular plugin that I talked about in a previous video, and that's pairing it with a plugin called Enhancer Pro Film Emulation. So as I talked about in my review for this plugin, which you can find in the description, Enhancer Pro Film Emulation is a plugin for Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and Adobe Premiere Pro that offers over 60 different film stocks and film print emulations to be able to give you that film stock emulation look. You're able to add a lot of things like film breath, gate weave, grain, film damage, things of that nature. But when you pair this plugin with the Helios 44-2 footage, it really gives you a combination that I don't know how else to say it. Pairing these two is just a pretty much cheat code when it comes to 2024 filmmaking. So think about it like this, right? If you're someone who owns a camera in 2024 and you're really looking to get that cinematic color and look to your digital footage, and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a cinema camera, you could spend about $400 on this plugin, another $200 on this lens, and get a combo that you'll never have to really pick up another camera with if you're really just wanting to push that feeling in your content. And then if you're someone who's trying to build your gear from the ground up to get this same feel look, if you don't have a camera already, you could get a budget camera like the GH4, or even cameras like the Canon EOS M that use Magic Lantern and things like that. But there's a lot of budget cameras out there that you can pair this $60 to $200 lens with, and then use the Enhancer Pro plugin to really give you that vintage film look that you get when you go to the box office. So final thoughts, the Helios 44-2 is definitely a worthy buy in 2024. If you're on a budget, you can pick this lens up for 60 bucks and mod it yourself. But if you don't want to put in a lot of that headache, you can get a semi-modded version of this lens off eBay or Etsy for about $200 and get the focus wheels and the front filters that you need, and then be able to get lens adapters to mount it to your camera. If you got the extra money sitting around, get the Dehancer Pro Film Emulation plugin to pair with this lens and really give your footage, your digital footage, a way to stand out from the rest of the people in your area. Also, if you want to save a little bit of cash on Dehancer Pro, you can get 10% off if you use my promo code DaVinci24. So head over to Dehancer.com and go get that. They're also the sponsor of today's video, so big thanks to the team over at Dehancer for being a part of the channel in a very, very big way and being one of our first big sponsors that we've landed since I first started YouTube. But with that being said, guys, that's enough of me talking. I appreciate everybody who made it this far, and if you did, I appreciate it if you hit that like button and the subscribe button. It really helps me keep putting out content for you guys like this. It's been another one from your boy DaVinci HD, reminding you the only reason that piece of art that you want isn't out is because you haven't pressed record. See y'all on set. Peace out.